Picture a world torn apart by war. Empires crumble, cities burn, and entire civilizations fight for survival. In this chaos, a figure emerges, a man who would rise above the destruction, not as a tyrant, but as a beacon of hope. His name was Saladin. Saladin was more than a conqueror. He was a visionary, a unifier, and a symbol of justice in an age of brutality. He reclaimed Jerusalem, not with vengeance, but with mercy. He stood against the might of the Crusaders, a force backed by the wealth and power of Europe, and yet, he treated even his enemies with respect. How did a boy from a small Kurdish family rise to become one of the most revered figures in history? What drove him to unite a fractured Islamic world and challenge the invaders who sought to dominate it? This is the story of Saladin the Great, the Sultan who united Islam, defied the Crusades, and left a legacy that echoes through the ages. The 12th century was a time of chaos and division. The Islamic world, once a unified empire under the Abbasid Caliphate, had fractured into competing dynasties. The Seljuks ruled parts of Syria and Mesopotamia, the Fatimids controlled Egypt, and the Abbasids held symbolic power in Baghdad, but their influence was waning. Amidst this division, a new and terrifying force had emerged, the Crusaders. In 1095, Pope Urban II called upon the Christian kingdoms of Europe to launch a holy war to reclaim Jerusalem. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of knights, soldiers, and peasants marched east, driven by faith, ambition, and the promise of salvation. The First Crusade ended in a bloodbath. Jerusalem, the holy city revered by Muslims, Christians, and Jews alike, fell to the Crusaders in 1099. Its Muslim and Jewish inhabitants were slaughtered, and the city's sacred sites were desecrated. The Crusaders established 4 states in the Holy Land: the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the County of Tripoli, the Principality of Antioch, and the County of Edessa. For nearly a century, these Crusader states dominated the region, threatening the very heart of the Islamic world. But the Crusaders' success was not just a result of their strength. It was also due to the divisions within the Muslim world. Instead of uniting against the invaders, Muslim rulers fought among themselves for power. Amidst this chaos, the people longed for a leader, a unifier who could restore dignity, strength, and justice to their lands. That leader would come from an unlikely place, a small Kurdish family living on the banks of the Tigris River. In 1137, Al-ad-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub, known to history as Saladin, was born in Tikrit, a small town in modern-day Iraq. His family was Kurdish, a people known for their resilience and independence. Saladin's father, Najm ad-Din Ayyub, was a military officer, and his uncle, Shirkuh, was a skilled general. From an early age, Saladin was surrounded by the world of politics and warfare. But he was also deeply influenced by his faith. He grew up studying the Quran, Islamic law, and theology, instilling in him a sense of justice and humility that would define his leadership. Saladin's rise to power began in 1164, when he joined his uncle Shirkuh on a military campaign to Egypt. The Fatimid Caliphate, which ruled Egypt, was in decline. Both the Crusaders and the Zengids saw an opportunity to control this wealthy and strategic region. Shirkuh, a trusted general of the Zengid ruler Nur ad-Din, led a series of campaigns to secure Egypt. Saladin, though young and relatively inexperienced, quickly proved himself as a capable soldier and strategist. He learned the art of war from his uncle, but he also demonstrated qualities that set him apart: compassion, patience, and a deep sense of duty. In 1169, Shirkuh died unexpectedly, leaving Saladin to take his place as vizier of Egypt. At just 31 years old, Saladin was thrust into a position of immense power. Many doubted his ability to lead, but Saladin quickly proved them wrong. He reformed Egypt's administration, strengthened its military, and restored Sunni Islam to a region that had been dominated by the Shia Fatimids for centuries. But Saladin's ambitions extended far beyond Egypt. He dreamed of uniting the Islamic world and reclaiming Jerusalem. Over the next decade, Saladin embarked on a remarkable campaign to unite the Islamic world. He forged alliances with rival rulers, married into powerful families, and used military force when necessary. By 1183, He had consolidated his power over Egypt, Syria, and parts of Mesopotamia. He had achieved what many thought was impossible: the unification of the Muslim world under a single banner. Saladin's leadership was defined by his sense of justice and compassion. Unlike many conquerors, he treated his rivals with respect and often spared their lives. This earned him the loyalty of his people and the admiration of his enemies. But Saladin's ultimate goal remained the same: to reclaim Jerusalem, the holy city that had been under Crusader control for nearly a century. Saladin passed away on March 4, 1193, in Damascus. He left behind no treasures, no vast personal wealth, only a legacy that would resonate through the centuries. Despite ruling an empire that stretched across Egypt, Syria, and Mesopotamia, Saladin died with barely enough money to cover his burial expenses. He had given it all away to the poor, to the needy, and to the defense of his people. Saladin's true wealth was not measured in gold or land, but in the values he upheld: justice, mercy, and unity. His name became a symbol of leadership guided by compassion, a rare quality in an age of brutality and conquest. His greatest legacy was the recapture of Jerusalem, not because of the victory itself, but because of how he treated the people of the city. When the Crusaders had taken Jerusalem nearly a century earlier, they left a trail of blood. But when Saladin reclaimed it, he offered peace. He allowed Christians and Jews to leave unharmed, even paying for the freedom of those who could not afford it. This act of mercy stunned the world. It showed that true power is not in domination, but in compassion. It was this sense of justice that made Saladin a hero not just to his own people, but to his enemies as well. Even his rivals, like King Richard the Lionheart, admired him. Their rivalry during the Third Crusade became the stuff of legend, but it was their mutual respect that stood out. Saladin's chivalry and honor transcended the battlefield, earning him a place in history as one of the most respected leaders of the medieval world. Today, Saladin is remembered as a unifier, a protector, and a symbol of hope. His life reminds us that greatness is not measured by conquest alone, but by the principles a leader upholds and the legacy they leave behind. Saladin the Great, a name that echoes through the corridors of history. His story is not just one of battles and victories, but of unity, mercy, and the enduring power of leadership guided by principle. In an age of division, he brought people together. In a time of war, he chose compassion. And in a world often defined by cruelty, he showed that honor could prevail. Saladin's legacy teaches us that even in the darkest of times, a single leader, guided by justice and humility, can inspire generations. He reminds us that greatness is not about how much power we hold, but how we choose to wield it. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life of Saladin the Great. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible tales from history. Until next time, let's continue to learn from the past to shape a better future.